Welcome back to the Pontiac Summit. I'm joined now for a fireside chat, no fire, but a chat with Kyle Hubert from Simulmedia. Can you introduce yourself? Give us a little background on yourself.
Sure. Thanks for having me, by the way. So Kyle Hubert, CTO at Simulmedia. For background myself, I'm a technologist that I've been working in performance for a long time. So I used to work with supercomputers and building supercomputers for Cray Incorporated, right? So some of the top research labs in the world were running software that I wrote. But I was always driven by making things go faster, 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 that I found out that I really wanted to work with the data itself and not just building things to make other people's software go fast. So I found myself here in New York, met Dave Morgan, CEO at Simulmedia, and commenced on making our platform go fast.
And tell us a little bit about Simulmedia and the platform.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. So Simulmedia's got a really, really awesome platform that's been really rooted in data-driven linear. Right? So the concept of it is that you have all this return path data that's available in the marketplace, right? And so you have the set-top box data, smart ACRs, dongles, everything that you can actually source in the market. And that all comes in, and you have this nice viewership kind of behavior that you collect. And so you stream that in. And then on top of that, you have any sort of demography or any sort of attributes related to people in households who are watching things. So you panelize that, scale it up, and then you have this really nice comprehensive panel that you can actually run data-driven linear. And so for a long time, Simulmedia got great success in doing just literally that. If you take a target, any sort of advanced target you want, hence the data-driven linear part, you can go and find them where they're on linear television. Irrespective of any of the total measurement currencies that exist in the marketplace, your target, your audience, and what they're watching. And so we built this whole thing to be like an ingestible platform. It pulls in the viewership behavior. It kind of uses machine learning to predict what they'll watch in the future. So you take this audience, if you're a brand and you have a message you want to reach a particular audience with, you say, oh, these are the really cost-effective ways for me to reach my customer. And so I'll lay out this media and I'll go and then reach them with my messaging and kind of roll it up. And then in the kind of last couple of years, I've been dabbling for quite some time with CTV and OTT. Last couple of years, consumer behavior changed dramatically, right? You and I have talked about this many times. And really, we found that what was high CPMs and low reach has now markedly shifted in the marketplace. And so now we have a TV Plus platform, which both is linear and CTV for a full cross-channel solution.
The TV buying for years is, and we talked about this a little bit in the first panel, the idea of one company that dominates the currency of how people kind of measure TV success. That's like panel-based, Nielsen, we can say the name. But with what you're doing, you talked a little bit about kind of signals that you can. We can rely on the data from Nielsen that says we reached these people, but do you guys kind of bring in other data? How do you view that data? What's the aggregation process there?
Oh no, it's really awesome. So when you're pulling in set-top box data and smart ACR television data, this is what's known as like an observed panel. So it's not the same as Nielsen. Nielsen's going out and they're actually signing up panelists.
Right.
So they have a very demographically accurate panel, and hence there's some constrictions on their size historically, right? So now they're looking at expanding this through Nielsen 1. That's great. But what we have is an observed panel. So if you go out and you actually source set-top boxes, which are coming in off of the MVPDs, as well as smart ACRs, which are the pane of glass for the smart television, you can actually say that these are observed viewing behaviors, right? So this signal, what that does is if you pull in, let's say I want to target these households, right? Like a 40-year-old like me living in New York, a household with a dog or whatever, you can say there is this behavior that we see for this household, and we know that they represent roughly 100 households in their region. I can go ahead and say that this is the ratings points, or these are the total viewership. I shouldn't say ratings, right? But these are the total viewership that will be accumulated if I go and buy TNT in the afternoon, or if I buy ESPN at night, right? And so when I look at that, I can say that's a really good cost-effective way to reach that person or those households. And I don't have to be tied to the currency. The signal is actually telling me literally that I've targeted these households and this is their viewing behavior, and this is what they're going to watch in the future because we have that whole forecasting pipeline. And so I can go ahead and lay out that media and reach those households and give cost-efficient reach. And I don't need to worry about what the currency says. And in fact, over time, this has proven to be very successful for Simulmedia. Like we have very little under delivery. We have hit our mark totally, like, I wouldn't say 100% of the time.
Which is very hard in generally linear TV.
And also in the last couple of years, it was even more hard, right? There's a lot of volatility in the marketplace. We still hit our numbers, right? Because we had this really strong predictive layer built on top of this observed panel, and it's independent of any currency that exists in the marketplace. So we can actually say that this is a great place to reach, and now we can go ahead and guarantee you, and that's what we do, right? We guarantee you impressions against that target, and you can match it up with delivery. It's fabulous.
Can you see TV and a different way of reaching kind of the TV style video? Are you able to learn more and different things now with CTV than you are on linear?
To some extent, yeah. Obviously, the CTV marketplace is really evolving in front of us, right? So it's no longer nascent, but it hasn't quite matured, and so it's going through some growing pains. But in the CTV side, we are actually providing with a, when I say panel, I'm saying like, we were talking about data-driven linear, but now we have a full cross-channel panel. So when you actually execute media through Simulmedia, we're going to tell your report how much was reached on linear only, how much was reached on CTV only, and how much was duplicated. And so you can kind of get a sense of how your media is performing. And this allows you to say, like, well, I want to adjust 50-50 on linear CTV. Maybe I want to put some more in this marketplace, maybe a little less out of there. And the linear side, this is great too, because you know, if you're doing direct deals with the network partners, which we're doing, you're able to actually say, like, okay, this network or this time of day or this program is really performing for me. I really want to put that on the media plan. And then I'm going to like layer around that and get a nice little buy going to bump up the reach. And then I'm going to add in some CTV because there's some video on demand that's happening over here. Or maybe I just couldn't really secure some network television viewing over here, but I can if I go to free ad-supported television or virtual MVPDs, right? So it gives you this really nice layer where you can kind of balance it and observe how your campaigns are going and you know, adjust in the future. And did I mention I love performance? Because we're able to do this like near real time. And that's one thing the CTV has been awesome about. Right,
it introduces that fact. I mean, it's, with the other folks that do linear buying, we talked to Tor and Chris earlier, it's a lot of people have the exact problem or are trying to do what you guys are doing, where it's like bring linear and bring kind of an approach to the CTV side as well. Do you see that expanding into video games and other things?
Oh, absolutely. So we have a Player One, which is a group within Simulmedia that's actually doing free-to-play gaming advertising. So it's reward-based in the fact that like you have to, it's also a nascent marketplace and you have to establish your relationship with the players themselves.
Literally, yeah.
So, you know, you have this notion that it is a very clear and concise statement to the player, watch this ad and gain some, you know, in-store reward points.
Right.
Don't click it if you don't want to, it's not intrusive, right? So you're establishing that relationship and that trust with the players. And then they watch those ads and they actually can go and further down the line interact with the brand or just go and play their match, right? Like, you know, that's to be seen. The marketplace is developing. But that really allows you to kind of, on top of linear TV, CTV, and gaming, give you a really good cross-section across the whole entire United States and in the globe, because we're expanding.
Well, it's so interesting that you kind of bring, like I'm a programmatic guy. And like in the programmatic world, it's like I need to have access to all of this via this machine. I don't want to talk to humans. I don't want to deal with IOs. But what you guys do, you have to be dealing with that. You have to be issuing IOs. And that's interesting because, you know, when we hear about video games and like, ooh, everyone's like, go buy a programmatic. It's like, no. It's like, no. But it's interesting. Do you see a correlation? I brought up Netflix with some of the earlier guys, but you see a correlation with the video game systems that you're able to get into. That's kind of IO-based, non-programmatic. Do you think it ever gets to a programmatic point in that space?
Oh, I think it's natural. I mean, it's definitely natural, but it has to develop a lot, right? There's got to be a lot more reach and a lot more like daily impressions before you get to that level.
Right, exactly.
Because once you get enough ad load, obviously you're going to find pockets that are better performance for some brands, and then therefore you're going to always be trying to like optimize yield. So at some point, yeah, it'll be programmatic. But now it's really much more like, you know, here's the gaming title. Here's like the times that I'm going to place the ad, and we'll go and expose it to the audiences. And so it does change. I mean, it's more like, I think earlier Tor was mentioning, right, with Netflix, he's saying that it's going to be direct IO, and then it's going to transition over time to PG, PMP deals and everything like that. I think the same thing will happen. And if you think of Simulmedia, like we're doing a lot of direct relationships. Like these are direct relationships with the games. These are direct relationships with the networks.
You have to.
This is all direct.
Yeah.
And so we are doing programmatic in the sense of like you have to when you're dealing with CTV and everything. Like when you get the bid request, you got to like figure out the value to the overall campaign goals and then serve back a bid response.
Response, right?
Yeah. So like in that sense, we are doing that. But it's kind of this balance that, that's really good for addressable and when you're trying to reach like an audience and say, who did I miss right now? But you still need this overarching media plan that's actually booked in advance. And so that is a tough balance, and it's one that Simulmedia is like pretty good at because we have direct relationships. And so we can say, yeah, I really want to place this on your network, and yeah, I will commit to this amount of spend to you, and then I will fill it with all this addressable inventory that's available programmatically.
I mean, it's, in what we end up doing a lot is kind of trying to stay on the cusp of what is there out there, right? We built this whole billboard thing because we kind of see that. And it's so interesting because what you're in your purview, that marketplace, the TV marketplace is so hard to even get a seat at the table, right? It's like, it's a little different with all the web products.
I think actually, honestly, we do paid promo for entertainment marketers, right? And that's giving a real value to the networks themselves, their marketing teams.
Right.
And that allows you a seat at the table because you're actually working with them and they see the value of your product, and then they're a little more like inclusive to say like, oh yeah,
once
you have all
get
this
it
other
spinning,
demand.
it can start going.
Yep.
And it's a little bit you've solved a little bit of the chicken and egg problem in that regard there.
Yeah. Yep.
What's the future? You said there's the video game component. What do you see your focus being the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years?
I think honestly, when you're dealing with a big national brand retailer and they've got commitments already up on like HGTV or something like that, college football, right? And then they're coming in and buying some scatter and they're like layering that out. That really programmatic is going to start to like interface more like DR, where it's going to be that daily like balance where you're planning these things out. But CTV, the industry right now, it's got a lot of customer pathways, a lot of avenues to actually securing that inventory. And so that's got to kind of play out a little bit. But when you get there in a couple of years, you're going to be able to make on-the-spot decisions based on prior commitments and be able to say, okay, I need to adjust a little high or a little low and have an actual machine be able to do that rather than ad ops people coming in 24 hours later and being like, oh yeah, up the buy, bring the buy down.
Right.
And so that's where the market's going to transition. And then on top of that, we're going to get more and more CTV players, which are really, really obviously like the Netflix, which have a really premium stance, which is like a vanity buy to the brands, right? It's going to have this real premium stance, and it's going to be an upfront commitment to them. So you're going to see that kind of similarly, I have an upfront commitment, and then I have all the day-to-day activity that needs to be there.
Well, thanks so much for joining me today. I learned, every time I talk to you, I learned so much. So it's again, TV buying's been around. So thanks for giving some insight. That's fascinating stuff. And thanks for your time, Kyle.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Cheers.